Hey everyone, welcome to our live show. We have Urinating Tree on with us. I think this is the third time we've gone live in 2 days. So thank you for joining us, Urinating Tree. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on, boys.
I mean, we got to thank Frankie for this. He's the one who reached out.
I mean, beyond thanking me, I thank you for coming on. I've been watching your content and everything for the last couple of years now, thanks to your good buddy 5 Points there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can't thank you enough for coming on, talking some NFL with us, and getting a little bit more of an American insight on our show.
Absolutely.
So before we dive into the NFL side, why don't you tell our viewers and listeners, how did you get started in YouTube and the NFL side of things?
The NFL side, I got started on. It was a couple weeks after I started coming back onto the YouTube scene. This was back in 2017 when the Cleveland Browns were, I think, 0-11, 0-12. They were on the way to not 16, sorry. They were on their way to 0-16. So there was a vid at the time called Only in Cleveland, the history of the Browns after the merger, or like after the move. And unfortunately, the problem with that video is it's excellent, but it only goes to the beginning of the Jimmy Haslam era. And as we all know, the Haslam era has been it's been a circus. So what my goal was that I felt like, why don't I do something about it? I wanted to make a video that connected that tenure and bridge it in between now. So you can have a little extra stuff with the Haslam era. But this was obviously my first video on football. I didn't expect it to go anywhere. So a couple weeks passed by. I released the vid. It just doesn't really get much traction. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Then at around the same time, the Jacksonville Jaguars just completely bottom out. Like they fired their head coach. They are just bad. They're miserable. Blake Bortles can't throw a football. So I'm like, wow, this is terrible. And I'm like, wait a minute, why don't you just do a vid on this? And it turned into 3 minutes of rambling, and that's how I got my start.
Now, was that the birth of the Locale series? That's still occasionally happening?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess to piggyback on that, the name Urinating Tree is different.
Mm-hmm.
When I first heard that, when 5 Points recommended you, I was like, what? So
yeah,
where did that come from?
It was me trying to be funny on Xbox Live when I was 15. And that's pretty much all it is. There's no huge backstory behind it. There's no unbelievable ethos or mythos. It's just, it'd be a funny name, Urinating Tree. And I just ran with it.
It's fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Shane, you want to get right into football talk here?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously we have a lot to talk about. Week 2 recap, and then week 3 previews and injuries and all that fun stuff.
So first things first. I mean, I wrote an article a couple of days ago about how I personally think that Chase Claypool is going to be the next star in the NFL that's Canadian. I mean, we've seen what he's been doing for the Steelers in the first 2 weeks. Where do you sit confidence-wise in Chase Claypool becoming a good number one receiver in the NFL?
If there's one thing the Steelers have done really well over the past decade or so is develop mid-round wide receivers. You've seen a bunch of them just grow on trees. You have Mike Wallace. You had Antonio Brown. You've also had, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson as promise. Chase Claypool looks pretty good so far. James Washington still has potential. So he's in good hands. The Steelers know how to develop wide receivers. That has never been their problem. And if he keeps playing like this, I mean, he had that big touchdown against Colorado. I'm sorry, Denver. I'm thinking hockey again. My bad. But if he keeps playing like this, that makes Juju expendable. And then Juju can get a big money contract somewhere else.
Yeah,
do you think
we're just rolling that here too? But
do you think it's smart for Juju to leave Pittsburgh? We've seen other receivers have success in Pittsburgh and then go somewhere else and just bomb.
I feel like he's going to go where the money goes. I feel like if the Steelers aren't going to offer him a contract and let's say Jacksonville or Miami is going to offer big money, I think he goes there. Let's say, I don't know, Denver decides, you know what, we're going to go offer you big money. I mean, it happened with Emmanuel Sanders, and he hasn't really missed a beat.
Hasn't been the same. I mean, I feel like he was on pace to be. He's jumped around too, hasn't he?
Yeah,
'Cause
he
he's
was at Denver for a while, then went to San Fran for a hot minute, and New Orleans.
Yeah, and it's just like he's probably the difference of someone like Santonio Holmes who did well. We all remember that catch, and then he went to the Jets, and then
Jets, he got traded for a
flamed out.
5th-round pick, I think, because of off-field issues.
Yeah, and then he just kind of flared out. You have Antonio Brown who thinks that he's better than God, and he flares out.
Mr. Big Chest.
Yeah, and that's disgusting. Like his biggest enemy is himself.
Yeah, so like, I think the history of Pittsburgh receivers having success in Pittsburgh and then going out somewhere else thinking they can be like a true number one and then flaring out should deter Juju from doing it.
I think you could see that last year. Juju was very limited when he was the main target.
Now, do you think that has more to do with the fact that Ben Roethlisberger was hurt?
I think a little bit of that, plus Antonio Brown was gone. So Antonio Brown created a lot of space for Juju because they were focusing more on Antonio Brown.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said it before. You've heard me say it that James Conner was hurt because running backs. That unfortunately you don't see a lot of running backs lasting all season just because of the pounding they take.
Unless your name's Frank Gore, and then you're immortal.
Yeah, Frank Gore is, again, exceptional.
Like everyone's tearing his ACL, and Frank Gore is here running 25 carries at the age of 37.
Frank Gore is he's different. I love Frank Gore. And
the funny thing was he fell in the draft because of injury concerns. Like, he got injured one year in, Florida. And it's like, oh, this guy's not going to make it. Boom. He might make the Hall of Fame just based on his longevity.
Yeah, I mean, he's also, I think, top 3 in rushing yards and whatnot. So, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. But you have the quarterback situation with Rudolph and Hodge, and it wasn't pretty. Johnson and Washington looked like, Johnson looked decent, but Washington
he had flashes.
So I think it was just everything. When you're a defense and their number one target's Juju, and then you don't have to really worry about a running game. You can just double team Juju and then force other receivers to make plays, and it just wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if he goes to any other team who doesn't have a solid number 2 or a quarterback like Big Ben, it's going to be the same thing all over again.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I mean, that's the risk they have to take. And with the Steelers, you might be better spending that cap elsewhere.
Yeah,
because the Steelers know they have a history of we can develop wide receivers. That's why they let go of Mike Wallace when they did. Because you have Deontay Johnson, you have Chase Claypool. That could be your 1 and 2. James Washington is your number 3, or maybe sign a slot guy. Or maybe draft another in the mid-rounds because it works for you.
Yeah, or take one of these washed-up receivers from another team that hasn't really done as well as you thought they would.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think, with Juju, he's going to demand some big money. Because of just the name recognition.
Yeah, which is crazy because you look at 2019 and you hope it's an outlier, but that's why you ball out on your contract years. No one cares about previous years. But I want to see what JT Watt's going to do because his contract's up this year.
TJ Watt, oh yeah, he's going to get paid.
Oh yeah, and I honestly, between him and Juju, I'm giving it to Watt.
Oh, easily, you give it to Watt. Far more valuable position, and he has far more impact as of late.
Yeah, and I mean, you hope that he can kind of convince his brother to leave Houston and have all 3 brothers playing for Pittsburgh at once would be
that would be interesting. Even though JJ doesn't fit the scheme, and you already have 2 good defensive ends and Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward. Hayward just got extended for a good bit.
You make it work.
Yeah, maybe.
If he's willing, because I feel like he's one of those guys, and I think his brother's the same. Where I don't think money's that big of a deal to him.
I think he
give
wants
him a
to
chance to win, and I think if his brother takes a discount, JJ can come in. He can fit. You can make the system work around him. It might actually help him because he's not the guy anymore. He has an actual line, And if you can stay healthy, you're just going to improve that defense.
Mm-hmm. And Houston, unfortunately, with the way they've mangled their team, I don't know if they really have a chance to like win a ring.
Yeah.
Not in a division with Kansas City and Baltimore.
Yeah. The AFC is going to get a lot tougher now over the next couple of years. That's for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're in a new age of the AFC. The age of Brady, Ben, and Peyton Manning is over. Like, I don't think Ben wins another Super Bowl, unfortunately, just because of the talent. You're in the age of Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
I mean, I think
Deshaun Watson.
I still think that if that defense is healthy, that defense it'll be like the Denver defense of Super Bowl 50.
They nearly carried the Steelers to the playoffs last year.
100%. And I think that's, I don't think KC actually has that good of a defense. The Ravens, on the other hand, are probably the best well-rounded team in the league.
Kansas City can go on streaks, though. We noticed that last year. You have the Honey Badger, you have Frank Clark, you have a couple other good pieces back there, so they can make a run if they want.
Oh, they can, 100%. It's just like if you can get them playing, if they're chasing the lead, and you can run the ball on them, because I think they were like 28th in the league in rushing defense. If you can run the ball on them, you're going to win. If you don't have to throw the ball, you can beat KC. The problem is that our offense is so high powered that they're not playing from behind very often.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because, you've taken the best offense in football and you added a great running back in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So, yeah.
I like what I've seen from Helaire the first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got one more for, I guess both of you guys can take a stab at this one before we move on from the Steelers. What's the plan after Big Ben?
We don't know.
Hey, unfortunately.
Well, that's why they brought him back, because he has $30 million owed in salary, and they don't have anyone else. I was hoping somebody would emerge just so you wouldn't have to rely on a 38-year-old quarterback coming off of an elbow surgery, but Rudolph and Duck showed flashes, but they weren't anywhere near ready for a full-time role.
No, and I think
Mason got too rattled, and Duck just doesn't have arm strength.
Yeah, and I think I think Rudolph is still their guy. I know they cut Duck. They brought back Dobbs.
Yeah, Duck's on the practice squad.
Yeah.
He's still there.
Duck also is on the Red Blacks negotiation list now as well, by the way.
Yeah. But I think if you're looking at it, Rudolph is still their guy.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of talk of Mayfield being out the door of Cleveland if they don't have any kind of success this year. I think if you put Mayfield into a situation like in Pittsburgh with Tomlin, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I think that's where it's going to come from. Honestly, as much as I'm not a fan of Rosen, if Rosen somehow ends up back available, I don't see why Tomlin wouldn't take a stab at him, bring him in, see what he's like. And he's one of the coaches that can turn Rosen into what people thought he was in college.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I've seen him play at Oklahoma State. He can, throw the rock. He can sling. But it's just getting that confidence up.
Yeah. And
now, speaking of Josh Rosen, too, the other Canadian Football League story that came out in the last couple of days is that Edmonton signed him to their negotiation list as well. And all of a sudden, now you're looking at a situation where, again, not exactly similar to Johnny Manziel, but nobody ever thought Manziel would end up north of the border either. So do you think there's ever a chance that Rosen ends up outside of the NFL, outside of the XFL, and playing in Canada?
Maybe. The problem is, I don't know if it's because he's just not that good or he's just been royally fucked over everywhere he's gone. Forgive me for swearing, but
go for it. We're all good.
Okay. Sometimes they're a little iffy on that, and I unfortunately don't have much of a filter. I never have, so
that's fine.
Apologies in advance. But the thing with Rosen, he had a year in Arizona. He looked really iffy. They decided to go in a different direction, which Kyler Murray is looking really legit though. And then goes to Miami, is kind of his receivers can't really catch. And then they go out and say, "Oh, Josh Rosen's the starter." 1 half later, get out of here, you're benched. And then he's just straight up cut. And then he goes to Tampa. So he's more third string, maybe developmental.
I mean, hey, going behind Brady isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the dude's just been. What's he been through? At least 4 offensive coordinators.
Yeah, and I think he's been sacked upwards of. He's definitely been sacked over
his
50
year in
times.
Arizona. He got crushed.
He got hit like I think they led the league in sacks coming up at like 50 some.
Mm-hmm.
I have the exact numbers here. I'll pull them up.
But like, you want to talk about someone not having coaching? That's Mayfield right there. When you're going into your like 4th head coach in your 3rd season or 4th year, you have problems. No quarterback's going to have success. No offense is going to have success with that kind of turnover.
Well, that's with the Cleveland Browns, though. So
yeah, I mean
sophomore year, he really struggled.
I mean, if they can get him moving, because that's what he did in college, was he was throwing on the run, and he did it against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football, where he was moving, throwing it on the run, and throwing darts. And if they can get that offense going like that, with mixing in Hunt and Chubb in the run game, Cleveland should be a threat. Like, it should no longer be
with Baker is he has like one main move. Oh, of course.
Like he needs to.
Like, I mean, they have talent.
100%, and they just need to be able to utilize it. Get OBJ open, get Landry involved.
Yeah.
So on the Rosen front, with how many times he's been sacked, 45 times in 14 games in Arizona, and another 16 times, and I think it was 4 games in Miami.
Jesus.
So he spent more time on his ass than he did standing in the pocket.
That's David Carr levels of getting smacked.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when people were like David Carr. I hate that David Carr is put into a bust category because I don't think he is. I don't think anyone would have survived those Houston era teams.
It's the same thing with Tim Couch in Cleveland. Like, they just didn't give him a course to support, and they got killed. Their confidence got destroyed. It's a good way to ruin prospects.
Oh yeah, I mean, the NFL is no forgiving place for that. Like people are already starting to claim, There's a good amount of players that were drafted in like 2018, 19 that are now being labeled bust. And it's only been like 2-3 years.
God, you look at Baker's getting it. Sam Darnold's going to get it very, very soon if he hasn't already started to get it.
Allen's got it.
Allen's got it. Mm-hmm. Undeservedly so, I think, in Allen's case a little bit. But
I
problem with Allen is he's wildly inaccurate. If he can channel that accuracy, he'll be good. But for the most part, it's just like you have the tools, but he just doesn't have the accuracy. If you're overthrowing your receivers by 20 yards, people are going to call you a running back.
Yeah. Have you seen any of the Bills games this far?
A little bit. They've looked good so far, but the main thing is you've played Miami and the Jets, and you can't really gauge that. I want to see them do well against legit teams. I have them winning the AFC East, but it's promising so far. I've loved their defense since last year. They have a legit core, even without Lotulelei. Stephon Diggs gives them a legit number 1 target. Devin Singletary's a great fallback and a safety valve out of the backfield. And, I mean, if Josh Allen is as good as you say you think he could be, you're legit.
Yeah. Well, just like even against bad teams, Allen's accuracy has been spotty and iffy. And he's never had the 300-yard game. And, he puts up 300 yards in week 1. Sure, the fumbles are an issue, and Bills fans are still whining about him. He goes into week 2, puts up 400 yards, and Bills fans are complaining about the game not being put away earlier.
Well, that's more on Miami. I mean, they're still sneaky developing as well. Miami's secondary just got destroyed.
It's really tough to win when you are missing your 2 best linebackers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think credit to Josh Allen and his offense there for actually winning the Buffalo Bills game for like the first time ever.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is my thing with like quarterbacks when they're like, oh, he hasn't thrown for 300 yards. When for Josh Allen's case, like he has like 729 yards, 200 and some of that is yak yards. So realistically, he's only thrown for 500 yards.
There's a lot of Stephon Diggs in there, John Brown. That's why I don't really care about yards. I more or less care about turnovers, passer rating, QBR. Those are your big things. How does he do in a situation? How are his reads? What are his check downs or his motions? Does he go to the check down too much? That's what you have to see when you're looking at a quarterback. You can't just look at straight yards because guess who got a lot of yards? Jameis Winston. He had a ton of 300 yards games. Guess what? He kept throwing turnovers and fumbling the ball like it was no tomorrow.
I think that's funny that you bring him up because it looks like Brady has channeled his inner Winston in Tampa.
He's done okay so far. Week 2, he did all right. I'm not crazy about Tampa because they just got names, but I mean, he would have had a good game, like stat-wise, if LaShawn McCoy could catch the ball. So
now, let me ask something about Tampa. Is Gronk done?
He's been done. I mean, if you saw him in 2018, he was just a shell of what he was. And it's sad to see because he was awesome when he was in his prime, but his body's just been battered down. And I mean, I get it's a nice story, to be back with Tom Brady, but his body's just worn down. It's just not the same.
What would you do with him?
I would say probably special teams and blocking.
I mean, you can't really cut him.
Maybe
right?
it's like goal line situation because he's just not the same guy.
I think realistically, you could cut him because you still have some.
can't.
I don't think
tight
he's
end
cutting.
there.
I wouldn't cut him because PR. It would just be a bad PR move to cut him. So I just let him look about the season.
And I mean, realistically, you'd also piss off Brady, right? He was a big advocate for bringing him in, and like, you're not going to. You went after this quarterback. You have a whole new brand. You've basically branded those two as like the face, it's part of the like faces of a franchise of a winning team. You can't just cut him. He's been out of football for a year. New offense. The team itself has struggled. Cutting Gronk would make it look like you're using him as a scapegoat or like he was the problem.
Yep.
And
he's the problem on my fantasy team. I promise you that much. He's gone from there.
That's different.
Yeah, my fault for drafting in the first place.
I mean, to be fair though, it wasn't a bad pick.
If it's like, a late pick and like a deep league, I can see people picking him.
Like, you have a lot of people are like, oh my God, this is going to be our 2018 Gronk and Brady. That's what it's going to be like. They're not thinking that he's been out of the football for a year. The end of the 2018 season, he didn't look good.
He looked bad.
Like, they're not thinking about anything else. They're just like, oh my God, Gronk and Brady back together. Bruce Arians' offense, which is a very good offensive system. You add in the fact that you have all these other weapons in Evans and Godwin and even Howard. If you have a double tight end set, you add in Fournette. Gronk should get better as the weeks progress.
Hopefully. I mean, like, not that I'm going to root for the Buccaneers or anything, and I hate Tom Brady, especially coming from a Bills fan's perspective. But let's look at a team inside of that division with the Saints, right? That was a disaster. That's not a game that you can let happen.
That was horrid.
But that's a team that literally has no offense outside of Kamara and Thomas.
But it comes down to
Drew Brees throwing noodle arm. 5 yards.
Is it going to come down this powerhouse race that everybody thought it was going to be between the Buccaneers and the Saints is just going to be who screws it up the least?
Technically, the Falcons should be up there too, but they're too busy.
Yeah, they're too busy choking.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we have a clip from that game. I want to know what you think about this.
Is it the onside kick?
It's the onside kick.
Oh. Here's the thing. When you're on the opposing side, you can pick up the ball at any time.
Yeah.
It's only the offense that has to wait for 10 yards. Just land on the ball. That's what you have to do.
This is literally the prime example of not knowing the rules of the sport you play.
Yeah. Dan Quinn says, they know the rules. It's fine. And then your owner's literally calling BS and saying they don't know the rules.
Yeah.
Like, make up your mind. Like, you've been head coach of this team for what, 5 years now? 6?
They let Shanahan go for...
Well, it's not even Shanahan. Like, he went to San Francisco to be hired as their head coach. They didn't let him go.
But I feel like if you fire Quinn, like realistically, if you were to choose Quinn or Schneider or Shanahan to lead this team, I think majority of people say Shanahan.
Well, let's say Shanahan now, yeah.
But even when they went to
Shanahan for 28-3 due to his aggressive play calling.
Yeah. I mean, and then that was a whole different story of play calling.
Yep.
I never understand what OCs or DCs get conservative when there's a lead. I don't get it. I don't understand what their mindset.
Oh, the thing is, like, they just want to protect the lead. Yet the thing is,
play the way you can play.
Hockey too. When you get into a defensive cocoon and then you have the opposing team literally just spend hours upon hours in your zone, It's the same thinking. Like, it's just like maybe psychological, if
It
anything.
makes no sense. The way you got the lead, you have to continue to play that way to keep the lead. I never understood the mentality that coaches have for that. It pisses me off every time I see it.
I think they're worried about burning clock than anything, but you can burn clock with an effective, well-balanced game. Now with just like 3 straight runs. Jags, Jacksonville had the same problem in 2018. Like, they had a nice lead, I think of 14. Problem is they kept running the ball, like draw plays and like quick screens on like second and third down. You burn no clock, you lose ground, and the Steelers conveniently had a good drive for their final ride and then won the game. In a game they didn't deserve to win. So that's the problem you have with conservative play calling in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I hate it. I hate coaches like that.
It's
I think that's the thing I like about Belichick is that, like, you can tell that he does not care what situation it is. He'll treat the fourth quarter up by like 20 the same as he'll treat.
That's how he should be.
And it's like I hate this mentality of coaches being like, "Oh, we're up by 20, let's stop scoring."
Yeah.
It's not your job to stop.
It's not a mercy rule.
It's not even a mercy rule. It's not your job. Isn't to stop yourself from scoring. It's the other team's job to stop you from scoring. I don't care if you win 40 points. That's on them, not on you. And I hate this whole unwritten rules of like, oh, if you're up by a certain amount, you shouldn't look to be scoring. Not my fault. Not my problem. You don't want me to score? Stop me from scoring. It's that simple. Yeah, I may toss in my second strings because there's no reason to play my first strings, but I'm not going to tell my second strings not to score. If there's an open guy in the end zone,
are going to use it for auditioning for new contracts and maybe a new team.
Yeah,
or starting role.
If there's a guy open in the end zone and I'm a second string quarterback, I'm going to throw it to the guy in the end zone. I'm not going to check it down just because I might hurt the other team's feelings.
Oh, God, no. Except for an example, look at San Diego and Texas in baseball. Fernando Tatis Jr., 10-0 lead, smacks a grand slam. And it was like a 3-0 pitch, and Texas got pissy over that. It's like, no, that's an unwritten rule. You can't do that. You can't hit the grand slam. You got to take the strike. You're up 10-0. There's no time limit in baseball. Let's suppose they take the strike, and then maybe he swings and misses at 3-2, and either he grounds into a double play or strikes out. I'm sorry, if you're a batter, your goal is to generate runs and hits.
And it made that situation even better because the very next night, Blue Jays went down 11-1 to the Phillies in like the first inning, came back and win.
Well, also Phillies bullpen is absolute trash. Their ERA is over 7. It's putrid.
Yeah.
But also, as I said, like you don't let up. Same thing happened. I was in Hamilton last year for Con Bravo. Me and a couple of people, like 5 Points too, we went to Rogers Center to see Tampa Bay play Toronto. Toronto went out to a huge lead. I think it was like 10-1 or something like that. And then they quickly blew the lead. Tampa Bay won, I think, 11-10.
I mean, if you ever watch the Blue Jays play the Tampa Bay Rays, that's less to do with them just giving up and them just not knowing how to play Tampa Bay ever.
Pretty much.
Always an issue.
Yeah.
But like, okay, prime example. I mean, you haven't watched much CFL, but there's been 2-3 years in a row where we've had blowouts like 60-1, 62-10. And no one says anything. Hamilton a couple of years ago got blown out by Calgary like 60-1 in like week 2 or week 3.
That was the funniest thing ever, by the way.
And it was literally and it was just like, okay, no one said, "Oh, you ran up the score, you did this, you did that."
No, you laugh at Hamilton for failing.
You look at Hamilton, you're like, "Why did you give up 60?" You don't look at Calgary being like, "Oh, why did you score 60?" You look at Hamilton being like, why'd you let up 60? And then
I actually laughed at Hamilton for only scoring 1 point. You're so futile. All you managed to do was miss or punt the ball. And then there was
last year against Toronto where it was like almost like 62-10 or something like that. And people looked at Toronto and be like, why are you giving up 60 points? They're not looking at Hamilton being like, why'd you score 60? And that's how it should be. I don't care if you win 10-1. You have to look at the losing team and be like, why'd you give up 10?
Exactly.
That's my issue with Brian Daboll, especially with the Bills. Cost them a game in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm still not over those penalties to Cody Ford, and I'm not over that play in the end zone either on the kickoff. I'm still mad about that. It almost cost them in week 1. If they weren't playing the Jets, it would have cost them last week if they weren't playing the Dolphins. Like eventually, it's going to bite them in the ass. They need to stop letting their foot off the gas.
Well, you have the horses to keep running, so why wouldn't you? I mean, you have the defense to stuff them. Your goal is to generate confidence for your team and build them into a true contender. You can't just do that by being randomly conservative.
Which is why I think Belichick's the GOAT in terms of coaching across most. And I think, even in the CFL, he argues Wally Brano or Hugh Huffnagel because they just don't care. They're going to put up 60 on you.
You can't care. That's the problem.
If you want to be a good coach, and I think you see it in hockey, the best coaches don't care about the score. They treat every period as a new score. It's 0-0. Let's go over and win that period.
Yep.
And when you start looking at the court, the game as an overall, we're up by 20, you're going to start losing. You have to go into every quarter being it's 0-0. We have to win this quarter. We're going to win the game.
And then the losing team just sits there wait, why aren't we not trying? We have nothing to lose. Maybe we get lucky and win.
Yeah.
Trey, I got to ask you a Cowboys question here too. First half Cowboys are the real Cowboys, or the second half Cowboys are the real Cowboys?
Dude, I don't know. I mean, the problem with the second half is they got bailed out by talent. Plus, Atlanta decided to be Atlanta. The thing with the Cowboys, they're not fumbling 4 times in one quarter. That's not Dallas. I think it's somewhere in the middle, I feel like.
I think what it was is closer to week 1. I think week 1 Dallas, where they were able to move the ball. Dak was able to sit in the pocket and throw it. I think that's what you see from week. That's the Dallas team you should expect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you saw progression in Prescott both in week 2 and in week 1. But they don't have the weapons. Honestly, you have Amari Cooper. Gallup,
CeeDee Lamb.
But I mean, CeeDee Lamb, he's a rookie, so I don't really. He still has to earn that right to be considered, a weapon of a consistent weapon. Gallup has had histories of just inconsistent drops. You lost Darwin James, who, he's a pretty big target out there. I think there's some room to grow, but I think Dallas is in good shape. If they can get a consistency going, they'll be fine. And that's their biggest issue.
I think the thing, too, is you're fortunate you're in the NFC East. Yeah. Phillies looks horrible. They're injured to hell. They have no line. Carson Wentz got booed in a stadium with no fans. The New York Giants, they just lost their best running back. Daniel Jones can't stop fumbling the ball. Their defense is atrocious. The Washington football team is the Washington football team. So unless they totally fall apart, the Cowboys should run away with that division.
My interest in this win.
Bullshit division championship.
No, they're going 10-6. They're going 10-6.
I thought they were going to win last year, and then they choked, and we laughed at them.
I think the one thing is that their best player, their best lineman, hasn't even played yet.
Mm-hmm. Tyron Smith is a beast.
And imagine when he comes back, they have basically a brand new line comparatively to last year. You lost your all pro center. Good on you. You put your health above the game. Oh. So you have a lot of pieces in there that they're starting to gel. There's not a lot of reps with this unit. You have a running back like Zeke who, you need to make holes for him. I don't think he's one of those running backs that can create many holes. He can bounce off target and find the holes, but he can't create many.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that O-line getting reps together. I think by week 4, this team is going to get going. This offense is going to be smooth. We're going to really see what CeeDee Lamb can do at the NFL level. Gallup should make improvements. So I'm saying, but if week 4 is anything like week 1 and 2, we'll know. By week 5, by the start of week 5, we'll know what Dallas team we should expect this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a believer in that team. I'm not a big Dak Prescott guy. Yeah, he had a really good game in the second half this week. I'm not fully on that train right now. One guy whose train I am fully on, though, for whatever reason, I've picked the Bengals to win every single game that they've played so far. And I picked Bengals again this week. I think Joe Burrow's been okay, hasn't been fantastic. And it's odd because I was not a big Joe Burrow believer before the season started. Where do you sit on the Burrow train?
He's had flashes of brilliance. That final drive against L.A. I keep calling him San Diego. That was really good. He was able to take what the Chargers were giving him. He wasn't forcing it. And I think that's a good sign for Cincinnati. At this point, it's just a rebuilding year. Develop Joe Burrow and gain some sort of traction. There's nowhere to go but up for them because they hit bottom last year.
I mean, you could go 0-16, but I don't know how much that would really be for them compared to last. They were just a joke.
The only thing I can think of is if they get the number 1 pick, they'll probably trade it for a big haul of futures. That's the only thing I can think of.
But like considering the fact that they're 8 points away from being 2-0, they lost by 5 to Cleveland, and then they only lost by if their Bullock doesn't pull a hammy on that field goal, who knows what happens in overtime? Exactly. So they could be sitting either 1-1 or 2-0 right now. I don't think this team is far off from being a competitive team. John Ross, if healthy, should be a game changer. Mixon is probably one of the best backs in the league right now. That O-line
I need Mixon to do something though.
Like I like Burrow. I like where this team is going. Obviously, I don't think they're going to be a contender this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if by next year. And I mean, the AFC North is it's going to be a slaughter with Baltimore and Pittsburgh in it. But they should make some noise.
I think they have a chance in the future.
If they can keep this expanded playoffs, they should slot in as that last team a couple times.
If they can get to 4 or 5 wins this year, they're in good shape.
Now, I'm gonna ask you a little bit about the quarterbacks that were drafted last year. We've seen Burrow, we've seen Herbert. We'll talk about that Tyrod situation in a second. When do we see Tua? And do you think Jordan Love ever plays a snap in Green Bay? Because they're already starting to trade Jordan Love rumors.
Why would you trade Jordan Love? The problem is with Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play till year 3, year 4, full time. So they're probably going to wait. I would say they're probably going to wait and see it, let him develop, see where it goes. That's always been Green Bay's thing. I felt like they needed a wide receiver or an offensive tackle. But if they've invested that much draft capital into a guy, why would you trade him immediately? You're not going to get the same value back. You might get maybe a second-round pick.
I mean, to be fair, he was a late first, so a second it wouldn't be too bad. But at the same time, Rodgers hasn't been I don't think he's played a full season in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So, if he goes down.
Has Love been added to the.
He's done well the last 2 games, though. So
100%. But if he gets hurt, you saw last year or 2 years ago when he was out for a majority of the year, that team stumbled. And that's what they're trying to avoid. It's just like Philly. They drafted Jalen Hurts because they needed someone who could step in, who had starter potential if Wentz were to get hurt again. And as much as they may have needed a receiver or an offensive tackle, that's great. If your quarterback gets hurt, you still need to address that problem. If they felt Love was their best option, they're going to keep him until he shows them that he's not.
Exactly.
Has he been made their backup quarterback yet? Because I know week 1 they went with some guy that I had literally never heard of.
Boyle. They probably go with Boyle. I think he's their punter / quarterback.
Oh, okay. So that's why I haven't heard of him. That's quite the mix. And then as far as Tua goes, do you think he sits on the bench the whole year, or do they throw him to the Wolves like they did Rosen last year?
I think they'll probably bring him in for maybe a couple games if they're bad. I think that's what's going to happen eventually. With Fitzpatrick, I mean, you know what you're getting with him. And I think they either trade him if they're going to go with Tua, or I don't think they're going to start him really early, mainly because I feel like they want to get him comfortable with the scheme and with the playbook. And you know what happens when you rush a rookie quarterback too early.
And considering his injury history, then they've already said that they weren't going to rush him.
Yep.
They did come out.
That's the right decision.
They literally, I think early in late June, early July, they came out and said that Tua won't be rushed into any kind of role. They're going to make sure that he's 110% healthy and 110% ready with the playbook before he even touches the field. Unless, honestly, even if Fitzpatrick gets hurt, if they don't feel like Tua is 100%, they're going to go out and grab somebody else.
Exactly.
Because they're not going to destroy this kid's confidence.
They wouldn't. That's the right decision to make.
Last thing before we get into next week's slate of games, the Tyrod Taylor thing. I don't know if you talked about that in sports ball or not.
I mentioned it. I found out about it this morning. It's like, dear God. Apparently, those injections are so routine that they should be second nature.
Also, what was he getting a painkiller for? That's what I want to know.
He had a rib
Cracked
injury in week 1.
They already have an issue with addiction, like painkiller addictions.
Mhm.
You're really gonna make this come out like, oh yeah, we punctured his lung by giving a painkiller injection.
I found something on the old Chargers doctor before this one. It's a guy named Zach Schwartz. He did it. The Chargers doctor before this one was also a huge problem. 2 DUIs, rated by DEA for writing himself 108 prescriptions, malpractice for severing a patient's artery, malpractice lawsuits for multiple career-ending misdiagnosis, and lost his surgery license in 2013. This was a guy by the name of Dr. David Chow. Well, no longer doctor, but I mean, this was the Chargers' old guy. And I feel like with the Chargers organization, I feel like they might be cutting corners in who they're hiring.
Maybe. And I mean, how long was this guy here? Because that would explain a lot of their injury problems.
Let me take a look here. Chargers team.
Because like it seemed like every year they were losing like 5, 6, 7, 8 guys.
It may be just like I don't know if it's the main guy, but they're not going to name him. Because like I would probably see him in Chargers personnel.
It wouldn't surprise me in an organization ran by Dean Spanos that we have massive issues.
Exactly.
Like I'm gonna run this clip from Herbert's first passing TD. I like it.
I have a couple. There's a Dr. David Dazaninga, Dr. Russ Petrie, Dr. James Ting, and Dr. Eugene Yim. It could have been one of those 4.
Whew. Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. But you know what? Herbert looked good.
For being thrown into the fire, he looked all right.
He looked
against the Chiefs too. Like I know the defense isn't that incredibly strong, but you're still playing against you're going toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes and coming within Harrison Butker 58-yard field goal of going to overtime. Or sorry, winning that game potentially.
Yeah, the problem is you gave the Chiefs too much time.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm a Chargers fan right now, though, I look at how a game against the defending champions went with a quarterback who, realistically, once this is all said and done, if he keeps playing like he is right now, could go down as one of the best to ever do it. I'm pretty happy with how that game went.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, I just want them to unveil those blue jerseys, those powder blue. I'm disappointed they didn't wear them last week. I'm hoping they wear them this week. I just want to see them. I want to see them. I saw like pictures and whatnot. I've seen people wear them, but I want to see them on field. But yeah.
As far as next week goes, we'll pull up our schedule here. First of all, I have not a clue how Dolphins at Jaguars is a Thursday night primetime game.
Jacksonville always gets a random Thursday night football game.
It's
usually between Thursday, or also either Tennessee Jacksonville is always the traditional Thursday night game.
Okay, can we just stop pretending that like Thursday night's actually a primetime game? Most people hate Thursday night.
It's a shitty matinee game. That's really all it is.
Yeah, it's just it's unnecessary. People hate it, so they put it. Usually they put in the worst matchups there.
They'll put like a marquee matchup, like they have the Steelers on once every bit. Thursday night football is only meaningful to me for the first game of the year and for Thanksgiving. They should not play them any other time. But the NFL wants that money.
Agreed. Honestly, I think they should get rid of Thursday night and either do the doubleheader on Sunday or Monday night. Personally,
like Monday would probably work better.
Yeah, because I think that's what they did for week 1, right? The doubleheader on Monday. Yeah. Yep. Get rid of the Thursday. Do a doubleheader on Monday.
They won't do a Thursday because there's too many TV contracts involved. They make money off it.
Oh, I know, and it's unfortunate. But I think if they were to switch up their scheduling, having a lot of people would probably prefer the doubleheader Monday.
I wish they had more 4:00 games. They only have like 3 or 4. It's too many.
Yeah, they have 100%. I don't understand why.
I almost feel trapped. Like you get forced to watch a certain slate of games. And when, especially for me, my team always plays 1:00 on Sunday. We don't get any primetime games. We get maybe one a year max. So it kind of just takes your options away completely.
But I mean, to be fair, I don't see why a team in LA, like why were the Chargers playing at like 11:00 in the morning? So like, I feel like if you have teams on the East Coast, play them at 1:00. That makes sense. The West Coast games should be at 4:00.
they change it too for like flex. So like the big games they want to like have at a primetime 4:00, they'll move. They've done it with the Steelers a lot the past couple of years.
It
Yeah,
happened
as
last year with the Bills game, I
season
think, too.
goes on, the important games like the division games and whatnot that were scheduled in the middle of the day at 1:00 that have importance on the schedule that they didn't know would get flexed into those primetime slots.
Mm-hmm.
So about this upcoming week, other than the Chiefs-Ravens game, I think that's the obvious one that everybody's got their eyes on. What stands out? What are you most excited for?
Rams-Buffalo is a real interesting one. So I think that's a watershed game for both teams. Like, are the Rams back to being legit? Or it's Buffalo's facing a legitimate opponent as well. So who's really going to come out on top there? That's really exciting to me. Yeah. That one, Houston-Pittsburgh is sneakily good too. Houston's problem is they've played 2 Super Bowl contenders. And this is a huge test for Houston because if they struggle and go 0-3, they're in trouble. And it doesn't matter if they should have fired him back in January. The main thing there is, like, if you can't get anything going against Pittsburgh and they're a weaker team than Kansas City and Baltimore, you've got Minnesota next week, and those teams could both be 0-3.
Yeah. And by the way, do you find that the Steelers are weaker than Baltimore, like offensively or defensively, or just overall?
I'd say overall.
Because, I mean, I think defensively they stand out pretty well.
Yeah, but offensively
though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think they're just like they have the unproven weapons, right? They have like two second-year players, a rookie receiver. You know, they're Vance McDonald and Eric Ebron.
They don't have like a legit runner. Like James Conner is like.
Yeah, you have a proven like 3-headed monster in Baltimore with Dobbins and Ingram and their new guy. I can't remember his name, but he seems to be taking a good amount of carries as well. Offensively, Baltimore, like overall, Baltimore is the best team in the league. But I think when you're a defense like Pittsburgh and Houston is statistically one of the worst O-lines in the league, Steelers should just be able to eat them up defensively, and their offense should do enough to win them the game.
Hopefully, knock on wood.
Yeah. By the way, Shane, too, you talked about firing Bill O'Brien. The second they found out that he was going to trade DeAndre Hopkins, they should have thrown his shit in a box and thrown it out the window.
100%.
They made him permanent GM. That's why they didn't.
Dude, how do you lose?
I've been under the belief that they should have fired him at halftime of that Chiefs game. That was atrocious.
How do you lose Clowney and Hopkins? How do you ruin
Clowney? You lose because you don't want to pay him and you trade him for pennies. And then you extend Whitney Merciless, and then you give Laramie Tunsil all this money and give up draft capital. And DeAndre Hopkins, you apparently compare to Aaron Hernandez. So,
yeah, I don't know. But that's the thing. How do you ruin these relationships? Like, how do you ruin the relationship?
Bill O'Brien, school of thought. And the only way you can get away with being Bill O'Brien Bill Belichick in this league is if you win. If you don't, you look like a blowhard. Just look at what's happening in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fair. Like, he's trying too hard. Like, no one's Belichick. And even if you hear some of the things out of New England, you know, he's not nowhere near what Bill O'Brien is.
No, he's nowhere near what Matt Patricia is.
Yeah,
like, they amp it up. And the problem is you have to be tough on them behind the scenes, but you can't, like, rip them in public or just, like, let that shit leak. You don't see, like, Bill O'Brien, like, randomly stabbing his players in the back. He just wants you to perform. That's it.
Yeah, it's just, you know, you're held accountable. You're held to do your job. Everyone understands that, like, you have a job to do. Trust your teammate to do their job, and we're going to win. That's how they've been able to win. That's why they've had one of the best defenses the last, like, 7 years. Because everyone on that defensive side of the ball understands that, like, I trust my teammate. Like, I trust this guy to be where he's supposed to be. I don't need to worry about it. I can just worry about myself. And that's how you have a great defense. And that's how you have a great offense. And that's how Belichick runs. And no one's been able to replicate that.
Exactly.
I would feel bad for Deshaun Watson, except he kind of did this to himself and signed a new contract there.
Yeah, he's getting paid. He thinks he can win in Houston.
I mean, it's only a 4-year deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he's there for 6 years. He's still technically in his prime of his career when he hits that free agent mark. I think it's also would be stupid for him to try to play it out, right? You know, you add in the COVID and the fact that, like, his contract wasn't really guaranteed. The way it was reworked is that now he gets more guaranteed money. It's just all injury prevention, right? Last thing you want is him to be blowing out a knee by the end of next year, and well, there goes all the money.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for him, I understand why you sign it. Like, you can make the argument that, hey, he probably could have made more on the open market. Hell, Mahomes probably could have made more on the open market, but, you know, you got to think about your career, and sometimes hitting that open market isn't the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the Steelers, Texans. You mentioned Bills, Rams. Who do you have in each of those games?
I'd probably say Bills for Rams, Bills, and for Steelers, Texans, I'm going to say Texans in a last-second victory.
You got Shane
That's more
mad
because
here.
of the power of Deshaun Watson.
See, I don't see it. I think they have what, Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb, I think, is there? Or is it just
They have Will Fuller, who always gets injured.
yeah, but Will Fuller may not even be playing. Last time I heard, he was still out. He was still
Shocking.
questionable.
Injured. Shocking.
Yeah. Okay, and like Brandon Cooks isn't as dangerous as he was in New Orleans.
Concussion issues.
So like, okay, you have Duke Johnson and
David
friggin-
Johnson.
Yeah, you have David Johnson because Duke Johnson's hurt. You know, if you can contain Watson, this should be an easy win for the Steelers. If you can keep him in the pocket and not have him run around, this should be an easy win.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have the defense to do it.
See, that's the thing though with Deshaun Watson. You can on paper it sounds so easy, but as I learned as a Bills fan last year, containing Deshaun Watson is not easy.
Okay, but last year they had DeAndre Hopkins. Let's be honest.
Sure.
Like, DeAndre Hopkins is miles ahead about anybody else on that team. Like, as much as JJ Watt, he's looked great, but like, that's really who else on their defense is you really have to be worried about in that front seven.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I feel like Pittsburgh, like Texans are in for a long season. If you're a Texans fan, I feel like you're in for a long season.
Shane, is there any other games you wanted to run down? I'll throw the schedule back up here. We don't got too much more time, so
Honestly, my interest is in the Raiders Patriots game.
yeah. The Niners Giants game raises interest to me too, just because of all the injuries the Niners have on there. I wonder if Daniel Jones can figure it out.
I think Sterling Shepard's hurt too.
He is.
Yeah, he's on the IR.
Who would have thought?
I don't know. Yeah, I think. Do you think the Raiders are legit?
I wouldn't say they're legit. I'd say they have a chance to sneak into a wild card spot, but I wouldn't call them legit just yet. I feel like New Orleans lost that game more than the Raiders won it.
I agree with that. And then I guess like one of the last things I have, the success that the Patriots have had, although they're 1-1 right now, does it make it look like it was Belichick winning for the Patriots, or can you still make the argument that it was Brady, not Belichick?
I'd say it's a combination of both because he's changed his play schemes and his playbook to suit Cam's strengths. And Cam looks like he's back to form, which is great for football.
Agreed on that.
I mean, they were
Not
really
for me.
close to winning too, but really, I mean, they tried going to the same well one too many times.
I hated that play call. That was
Should have passed the ball.
when you motion your guy out. Well, we say that now, but we saw what happens if that play doesn't work. With the Seahawks in the Super Bowl there.
Yep.
But when you motion all your guys out and you have them block and you move your running back into a spot where you can't really hand the ball off to him and you telegraph, here comes Cam Newton right down the middle.
Yeah, you would have been better with a rollout.
Yeah, I don't like that play call at all. That was something I was left scratching my head on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We saw that one in the Grey Cup that gave Ottawa a win that one year, Shane.
The shoelace tackle.
Yeah, you can't go to the well too many times or else it'll bite you right in the ass.
That's for sure.
Well, I think we don't want to hold on to you for too much longer, so we've We're very thankful that you decided to come on with us.
And not a problem, guys. Thanks for having me on, by the way.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
I'm gonna head out watch that sports ball episode right now. I think so. This should be up in podcast form pretty soon. So we'll tag in all that fun stuff.
Absolutely, and I'll like and retweet all of it, my man.
Yeah, we'll give you the opportunity right now to shout out your stuff. We've had the ticker going across, but podcast listeners.
Nothing wrong with that, man. I'm on Urinating Tree on YouTube. I shit post. That's really about it. I also am on Twitter, Urinating Tree. I shit post on there too. So mainly that's all there is to it. But otherwise, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on, man. Like I said, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that is all. Thank you, Urinating Tree, for coming on.
Once again, thank you guys for letting me on.
I thank you guys for tuning in. It was great. If you haven't had a chance, head over to Urinating Tree on YouTube. Check them out. For myself, you can find me at Shane_Ryan97, Frankie at HPR_Frankie13, and for the podcast at 13th Man Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and on YouTube. Have a great one, guys. We will catch you back here on Tuesday with a brand new episode.